Before I introduce our guest speaker, Michael, I think this is a very small group. We should just quickly go around the room and introduce ourselves, if that's okay. So I'm Richard Segan, and I've been a Rotarian for 7-8 years, thanks to Elias, who invited me in after they had given the Rotary had given a very generous grant to the Brookline Sister City project to help on water. So, Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Moyer. I'm a retired emergency physician. I live here in Brookline. Been involved in this peace series we just talked about.
Ross?
I'm Ross Feldberg. I live in the building, so I'm the person who reserves the room and sets up the equipment. That's my major claim to fame.
And a retired
biochemist.
Biochemist professor in it. Yes.
I'm Evan Klein. I live in Brookline, and I've been part of Rotary for, I don't know, what, 2 years?
Yeah.
No, not even. Thanks to this guy right here.
Jesse?
Jesse Feldkamp. I joined Rotary here 2022.
4 years.
You're an ex officio member in China, right?
Well, it was not officially, but yeah.
And Jessica, are you chair of the Violet work group this year?
I'm not chair, but I was.
You were facilitating it.
Jim telling me Carol is having a hard time doing that. So I'm on the EHS PTO, so it might be easier for me to help to communicate with the 10th graders.
Okay. Fair enough. Elias.
Elias Howdy. I've been a member since 1993. I was brought in by a fellow Rotarian. She no longer here. She's someone who I knew way back from Northeastern University times. Devorah Shortsleeve, and she brought us both in 1993. Yeah.
I'm Lodi Audi. I've been a Rotarian for 33 years, the same as them. We joined together.
Thank you,
Well, you know who I am. And everyone knows who I am. I'm the notorious BWG. At any rate, I serve on the select board with Michael. And on Tuesday, the select board voted to put a big, well, we'll characterize it as not a big, but an important override on the ballot, which would put $23.31, I think, million on the levy, which is that big ball of money that is used to pay schools and town purposes. And this discussion is very relevant because that levy is paid by the taxpayers, both residential as well as commercial taxpayers in the town. And how much residential taxpayers pay in their taxes to fund that levy, to some degree has to do with how much commercial development we have in our town. Boston and Cambridge and Newton have huge, Newton less so, but huge amounts of commercial property, biochemical labs, hotels, all those things. And that takes a huge burden off the residential taxpayers with respect to paying the levy. We don't have that much commercial development in Brookline, so the burden on residential taxpayers is pretty high. We're trying to do something about it by encouraging and incentivizing and rezoning and other steps to bring our commercial development up. And one of the areas where we're trying to do that is Chestnut Hill, which is why Michael's discussion tonight is so timely as well as important. So,
I'm Don Deworth, and I've been a Rotarian since 1983.
10 years.
I was brought in by Bob Snyder, who was the president at that time.
Thank you, Don. Happy to have you, Joyce.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Joyce Kraft, and I'm a member of Brookline Rotary, and I'm also a homeowner in Brookline, and looking forward to some breaks on the override. Otherwise, the rents in my building are going to go up about 7%. So, yeah. So I appreciate you guys working on developing commercial property.
Thank you, Joyce. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep. My name's Alex Neary. I've been a Rotarian since 2024, also a homeowner in Brookline. Interested in this issue also because I'll have two children in Brookline school system sooner rather than later. And I want to make sure that their futures are well funded and that we have enough tax revenue in order to pay our balances and have the great city that we know.
Thank you, Alex. Alex is also the president-elect of Brookline Rotary. We're assuming the presidential role on July 1st. So we're pleased to welcome Michael Rubenstein, a member of Brookline Select Board. Michael was elected to the Select Board in 2025. He's already become a thoughtful and active voice in Brookline civic life. Following earlier service, you were a town meeting member, I believe, right?
That's right. Precinct 13.
And other leadership in the community. Tonight, he's going to be talking about the Chestnut Hill commercial area development, as Bernard said. And I would just say that we're very thankful for Brookline residents stepping up and providing leadership and dedicating untold numbers of hours that benefit all of us. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, Bernard. Michael, the floor is yours.
Well,
very happy to have you here.
Thank you all, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to join you. The first thing that I have to tell you, my last name is Rubenstein. It rhymes with Brookline. Thank you for the context setting, Bernard, for the Chestnut Hill commercial area. I wanted to just spend a minute or so talking about the last 10 months or so. As you said, I joined the select board in 2025, and given that the chair is here with me, I have only good things to say about being on the select board. It is quite it is quite an experience learning all of the pieces and parts of our town government, the executive branch, all of the town departments. One of the things that I have learned is that our town is blessed with excellent staff at all levels. And we, in addition to all of the volunteer work, there is a professional cadre here in Brookline, which we should really celebrate and be thankful for, because all of the things that you see, whether it's care for the roads and care for the schools and the programming that you see in Brookline Day and other civic events, all of these things are being coordinated and driven by town staff. And this work that I'm doing now is also primarily being driven at the select board direction and through our planning and community development department. So they're sort of helping all of us, and I just want to express my gratitude for them. So let me talk about the Chestnut Hill commercial area. This project actually began with a select board vote on November 14th, 2023. At that point, the select board directed the planning department to begin a study of the Chestnut Hill area. Now, the Chestnut Hill area was actually identified back in our last comprehensive plan, Brookline's comprehensive plan of 2005. We're right now in the process of developing a new comprehensive plan, but it has been identified for over 20 years as a place where there is an opportunity for development, and hopefully, with a vote at town meeting in May, we will be able to begin the process of realizing that opportunity. The select board had a couple of key goals in this work. One was to incentivize net new commercial tax revenue. Bernard talked about the growth that we need in order to expand the tax base and spread the burden of funding across more businesses, more residents within the town. And the second was really to create a livable area within Chestnut Hill. And we're all familiar with Washington Square and Brookline Village and Coolidge Corner, St. Mary's, for example. But part of the vision for this area, the 27 acres that make up the Chestnut Hill commercial area, is really to create a neighborhood, create a livable destination that is a place that people from all over Brookline can enjoy. Of course, there are many neighbors close by who will be able to walk, but there's a T-stop close by and other ways to get there. And so it's my hope, at least, that over the time of development, 5, 10, 15 years, that Chestnut Hill actually becomes a destination just like the other neighborhoods of Brookline. The select board gave the planning department these directives, and for the last 2+ years, the planning department has been working both with the Economic Development Advisory Board, a community advisory group that was established just for Chestnut Hill, and trying to figure out what is possible and how we should move forward. So for those of you who don't know where this area is, okay, so this is a map of the Chestnut Hill commercial area. It runs along Route 9 on the western edge of Brookline. To the west is Newton, to the north is Newton. For those of you who know the street is right next door. If you can see my cursor, which you can't. So where it says TOM here, that's about where the Star Market is. And the major cross street there is Hammond Street, which runs north towards Boston College.
So where's the Star Market?
The Star Market,
The green.
if I want to point out, is right here.
The green.
Oh,
So
okay.
the Star Market is in Newton.
Right.
The parking lot for Star Market here, that's in Brookline.
Oh, okay.
So over the course of these 2 years, there's been a lot of work done. There have been over 20 meetings of that community advisory group that I talked about. There have been lots and lots of public comment. The select board has had its discussions. And there have been 11 members of the community advisory group who really dedicated themselves to understanding what's possible in this area and making recommendations to the staff, who are then presenting their analysis and findings back to the select board. Okay, so these are just some of the areas that were being considered. Okay, so let me just tell you some of the areas that we talked about. What is the fiscal impact of this town? What are the transportation issues? How are the members of the neighborhood going to come to this area? What kinds of housing can we create on this area versus what kinds of commercial developments? And also, what kinds of design? What are the things that we can do to enhance the sense of neighborhood? So these were all areas for about the first half of the 2-year process. The community advisory group was really diving into these with experts and trying to understand what would be best for this particular area of town. And then as a result, the planning department is now in the process of doing its final assembly on a whole host of study recommendations. They've already presented draft zoning to describe, what kinds of forms should be in the space, what kinds of uses should be allowed, and other aspects of zoning, tree canopies, open space requirements, circulation requirements, floor heights, all sorts of things. There are design guidelines that are worked out with the planning board, who is responsible for part of the design process for any new construction that goes on here. And transportation improvements where we work with the transportation board. Now you'll remember this is along Route 9. Route 9 is a state highway, so we also have to engage with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, which owns that highway, as well as the city of Newton, which is very involved in the traffic concerns of that neighborhood. So the area is split up into 4 sub-districts labeled 4.0. You can see NMU. The red district, which isn't labeled, is called Chestnut Hill Commercial 3.0, and then the one to the north is the transit-oriented mixed-use district. The 4.0 and the 3.0 are the most dense commercial areas, particularly the 4.0. Those numbers refer to the number of square feet of buildable space that can be built on the lots. And then the neighborhood mixed use is really designed to be more housing, more smaller scale.
Here's the 3.0.
The 3.0 is the red block. It's between Sheaf Street and Route 9, between Holly Lane and Hammond Street.
Is that part of right at the beginning where next to the parking lot for the Shaw's, where the gas station used to be,
Yeah,
over
there's
on the other side, that big building going up?
Okay, so that big building is right here.
Right,
That building is right there.
right.
Yeah. It's a 6-story building built actually not with this zoning code, but with another section of Massachusetts zoning code.
Was that
gives them
40B?
more. That's a 40B.
Right.
So you can see across the district there are different heights in the different subzones, and this was again done intentionally to encourage mixed use, different kinds of uses in different spaces. The 4.0 area has the greatest height. The zoning currently allows up to 12 stories. And there are bonuses that allow people to build up to 14 stories, depending on the amount of commercial development that they include in their projects. So every single project that uses this overlay zoning has to go through a special permit process and a site plan review process with the planning board. So all of those processes give the town an opportunity to weigh in and make suggestions and make sure that all of the projects are sort of consistent with the vision of the Chestnut Hill commercial area.
One thing that's confused me is there's structures there now,
Yes.
so those would have to be torn down.
For redevelopment of some of those buildings, that's true. For example, if you look in the western area here, so there's one owner here, and I'll talk about them more later, called City Realty, that is redeveloping these 4 parcels, which currently has a Citizens Bank building and 2 empty buildings. The intention is that those will come down for their new development. So, as I mentioned before, City Realty has bought those 5 acres on the very western edge. And while the study group has been looking at the region as a whole, there's been a parallel process where City Realty has come to the town and said, we're interested in developing this space, which has actually served a real benefit for the town, because a lot of times you either have a project like the City Realty project, but no particular vision for what should go on around it, or and this is really what happened along Harvard Street, you have a vision for what should be produced, but nobody who's actually testing that vision against economic realities. So in this case, we actually have a vision and a project going on. And City Realty sort of bought those 5 acres in 2024 and has been presenting conceptual designs to the community advisory group. And then we sort of settled on one design, and the town has actually been in negotiations with City Realty in order to get more public benefits, which I will go over in a minute. So the zoning itself has a whole bunch of aspects to it that are there to meet the select board's original objectives. There is a minimum commercial percentage requirement, which means that anything that's built in the 4.0 and the 3.0 districts has to be at least 51% commercial. There are incentives that allow you to bump up those numbers based on particular uses that are beneficial to the town. For example, if you build a hotel, then the town gets hotel excise taxes and other taxes, which is a benefit. And so we give an incentive for that particular use case. Medical office is another case. And in other cases, we gave incentives particularly to reflect the kinds of uses of property that the neighbors were interested in. So a lot of neighbors were interested in small scale retail, coffee shops, restaurants, etc. And so there are incentives for that kind of development as well. The allowed uses, hotels, restaurants, coffee shops, housing, etc., brewery, winery, are much expanded. And one of the challenges that we've had previously with the Chestnut Hill commercial area is that the uses were relatively limited. And so in particular in the western area, for the far west parcels, the only thing you could build was office space. And as many of you may know, office space right now in the greater Boston area is not being developed. partially because of the pandemic. People have done more remote work, so office space is not as valuable. I mentioned the special permit and design review process. When I talk about massing constraints, these are all the things that are put into zoning about how much building you can make, how far the buildings have to be from the street, and all of those details. Open space requirements, parking requirements, all of these details were all worked out into the zoning. And then in parallel, I mentioned before, there was a negotiation with City Realty, and that negotiation defines the program of buildings that they're going to build, and provides a whole bunch of benefits to the town. The two that I'll mention first, the financial benefits. The town has a affordable housing trust fund, which we use to primarily leverage state and federal dollars to build affordable housing. And that 10.93 million is actually the largest payment that's ever been made into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and will get paid out as some of the condos that are being proposed get sold, and then as a condition of those sales, there will be payments into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And then there's an additional funding of transportation and public safety improvements, roughly $12 million, depending on some details of the construction. But that will fund things like making sure that the traffic along Route 9 is better, improving sidewalks, bike lanes, public safety infrastructure. There's been some discussion of a new ladder truck for South Brookline that this could possibly fund, and other public safety and transportation improvements. And then there are a whole bunch of protections in there that were specifically requested by the neighborhood. For those of you who don't know that neighborhood well, Heath Street, which runs along the southern edge of the Chestnut Hill commercial area, is actually a pretty bucolic street. And lots of people take walks down that street, and it was very important for the neighbors to preserve that character. So there are aspects of the agreement to limit car traffic on that street, limit access between Heath Street and the buildings, so that most of the car traffic will come in from Boylston Street. There are setbacks for the buildings, so that the buildings are sort of not encroaching on Heath Street as much, and the internal circulation of traffic is also all comes from the Boylston Street side, not the Heath Street side. But on the other hand, we did want to make it pedestrian friendly, and there's going to be a public plaza in the space, and lots of amenities for neighbors to enjoy.
Public plaza is going to be in a high-rising building?
I'm sorry. The three buildings that are being proposed by City Realty are a 14-story building to the far east side of their property, which will include retail, a hotel, parking space, and condominiums. The second story contains retail and a medical office space. And the third is apartment rental, a 7-story building on the far west side. And then to the west of that, there's a 40-foot vegetative buffer to, again, protect the neighborhoods from noise and sound. And between the first two buildings, there's about a 100-foot wide plaza that will have tables and trees and benches and places for people to sit and enjoy the amenities of the retail establishments that are on either side. So the other thing that I want to mention, the tax certainty agreement. The planning department hired an outside consultant to build a financial model to understand the fiscal impact of this project, both in terms of the revenue that it could produce and also the expenses of the people who might live there or the businesses that might open there. We took that model, we plugged in the program that City Realty proposed and looked at some different parameters. The estimates are that this will generate somewhere between $4.2 and $6.3 million per year in additional tax revenue. So if you think about that in terms of the override, so the override is, I think, $23.25 million spread out over 3 years. So this project spread out over 3 years, is somewhere between 13 and 19 million dollars. So in terms of relative to an override cycle, it's roughly 3/4. Two important questions that people have asked when I've made this presentation in other contexts. Number one is, so once town meeting passes the zoning, what happens next? I mentioned before site plan review, building construction drawings. The building department has to review all those construction drawings and then issue building permits. That process is going to take probably about 1.5 years through December of 2027, which means that shovels would go into the ground probably in the spring of 2028. Their plan is to build the first building with the hotel and the condominiums, and could take 3 years, more or less. And the other question that people have asked is like, so there is some controversy about the zoning in terms of the height and whether or not the neighbors are getting everything that they need. And so the question has been asked, so what are the alternatives? What happens if we don't pass the zoning? And the information that we have here is from City Realty in terms of their plans for the space. They could release the Citizens Bank building, in which case the town would continue to get the roughly $1.1 million of property tax revenue that it gets now. City Realty has submitted a 40B project using the same zoning code that was used on the corner of Hammond Street and Route 9. The window for building 40B projects is not currently open. There are some sort of changes in our affordable housing stock that would have to occur for that to happen. But they have that option to just wait for that window to open up. Or they could file a different warrant article that would pass, that could pass town meeting more easily. But that warrant article is constrained to just housing, which would be helpful for them. Housing is something that a lot of developers are interested in building these days. It does have the problem or the challenge that it would sort of go against the intentions of building a commercial district in this area. So those are some of the alternative scenarios. Let me just quickly go through in case some people are more visual and some people are more interested in the numbers. So these are some of the pictures from City Realty in terms of what might be built.
That's nice.
So this is the bird's eye view. On the left is the 7-story, is a concept drawing of the 7-story residential building, then the 12-story retail and medical office building, and then the 14-story retail, hotel, and condominium building.
Just to orient me, where is the Star Market?
So that's a great question. So this is Heath Street here. This right here is Boylston Street. These gray buildings here, back here, are the streets. So the Star Market
All the way to the right.
is actually sort of through there.
No, it's all the way to the right.
Yeah.
Further to the right.
Well, some of these are still in the Chestnut Hill commercial area. That might actually be the Star Market, but it is definitely in that section.
Thank you.
And then Hammond Street cuts across
Right.
over there.
Okay.
Okay, so this is once it comes, this is a different view. So this is looking inside. I mentioned the large open space between building A and building B, and the interior circulation. So you can see here's the Boylston Street and Boylston Street traffic.
Is that Boylston Street or the inner?
This here is interior circulation.
Right. Okay.
Boylston Street is sort of this
Right over there. Yeah.
Although they're creating almost like an own like little community inside of the community.
Well, yes, but as you'll see in the next picture, it comes out. The next picture, you'll see sort of where the pedestrian aspect is.
There you go.
Okay, so this is a vision from the Heath Street side, looking into that same large plaza. So here is building A, here is building B. The street is sort of through those trees across Boylston Street, but there's pedestrian access from Heath Street into the. So there's a little more connection.
That's very similar to how they did the street.
Yes, though in this case we have taller buildings and
Right.
more plaza. And the parking, because the street has a lot more land associated and they can do service parking everywhere. Right. The parking here is mostly structured. So this is a view from the corner of Tully Street in Boylston, looking at the hotel, and then farther down the medical office and the residential building.
That's supposed to be Tully Street?
Oops, sorry, I should go back. Tully Street is right here. So this crosswalk, this parking lot is actually owned by somebody else. Oops.
Back.
It's going to start flashing. My apologies. Yeah. Okay. And this is a view from Heath Street, the first, about where the first house is, looking at the 7 stories, 12, and the 14-story condos you can tell. And I think 1 or 2 more pictures.
Going to be a great stress on water, sewer, all that stuff.
Yeah, there actually is a sewer line that runs through this that the developer is going to have to move and potentially expand. But that's sort of all part of it. The memorandum of agreement actually says they're responsible for that. This is the view again from Boylston Street looking southeast. So Star Market would be to the left. Okay. You've asked some really good questions so far. More questions?
Yeah. I drive along that area all the time. I'm living in the center and coming into town.
Yeah.
And I think it's an excellent location for larger buildings because you got all the commercial across the street. You got the tea. You got the supermarket. So I think that it's hard for people to swallow that size building, but it really is an excellent location for it. I think that my main concern is how the traffic would flow into Route 9. And I had heard that there wouldn't be any outlet onto Heath Street. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that's what I had read somewhere.
Yeah, that was one of the agreements with the neighborhoods, is that for that block, where the new city realty is, all of the vehicular traffic will come in and out from Boylston Street. There is an entrance on Heath Street for emergency vehicles only,
right,
sort of like on the Wegmans.
Yeah. So I think that the traffic flows differently going inbound. They goes outbound. Outbound, they have a commercial area. There are a couple of different exits from the street besides going right onto Route 9. I don't know if this is going to have access onto Tully Street, but I think what I'm getting to is that I think if they're going to try to have only exiting onto Boylston Street, they need to have some sort of land taking and a feeder lane put in, because I see what happened with Wegmans, which also is much smaller in scale than this, and they're having big problems with cars exiting and traffic coming down and wanting to take a right onto Hammond Pond Parkway. Here, I think it would be much worse. So I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. With a feeder lane.
I do. There is a bus lane at least for a part of that section, which probably will end up serving as a feeder lane on the Route 9. part of that $12 million of mitigation payments is really, I think, going to be devoted to studying this very problem. They have done a 3-phase traffic study of the area overall, thinking about, I saw that smile. Thinking about, the corner of Route 9 and Hammond Street and Heath Street, Hammond Pond Parkway and Heath Street, Woodland Road, all that whole area, and sort of how this would affect traffic. But there's still plenty of work to be done, and also work to be done with Newton and Mass DOT. The timing of that work is such that it really has to be done after the zoning is passed, because until the zoning is passed, people like Mass DOT and Newton aren't really going to be sure of what Brookline is bringing to the table. But part of the point of doing this 2-year study and considering all of the options is to actually establish a vision for the space.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that the same type of access that the street has, or exiting, wouldn't be sufficient for this type of project, in my opinion. It would have to be better than that.
Yeah, I take your point. I mean, there are obviously curb cuts from Route 9 into the space.
Currently.
But it might take more.
What's your overall I guess feeling amongst everyone that you brought it up to, in terms of how they I love the idea, but that's besides the point.
So the conversations that I've had in the living rooms with neighbors centers around 2 realities. One is that change is hard, and this is a big change from a 6-story building and 2 empty 2-story buildings to sort of a much more active and full neighborhood. And it's also going to take time for this to be built. There is disruption in construction, and there are multiple years ahead. This is not a short-term project.
Right.
And the vision for all of Chestnut Hill is one that is also going to take even longer to realize. I think that across town, many people are looking at this as a benefit for the entire town, both a fiscal benefit and a destination benefit. That is, a new place to be a part of. But particularly in the context of the override, there was actually some concern that people expressed that this project and the override are actually tied together even more tightly, because Brookline's ability to do projects, I want to say projects of this scale, but the truth is there aren't many opportunities for projects of this scale within Brookline. But our ability to work with developers and bring in the commercial revenue and the vitality of the projects like this is very germane to whether or not people think that the town should also at the same time be increasing the levy.
Is the one I'm a developer obviously and stuff like that, but my question is a lot of people's concern in the Chestnut Hill area. I have a lot of friends that live in Chestnut Hill that went to Baker School at one point. Is now they're older. If they want to go to a restaurant or something, they have to come all the way to Washington Square, all the way from Chestnut Hill. Right. And is there more talk of like those small parcel off the that Rotary there about putting some better restaurants and high class things in those areas?
Are you talking about the other areas of
the other areas of Chestnut Hill that aren't exactly right, that aren't exactly on the Route 9 side? Because I think there's a lot of land that can be utilized better for Brookline for commercial.
By the way, after you finish, Alex Neary is there. Stand up.
Great. A point taken. That sounds to me like a really good question for the comprehensive plan, which is actually looking at what kinds of opportunities there are across Brookline.
All right. Alex, you have a question? You're muted. Alex?
Yeah. I'm interested, Michael. Thank you for this, by the way. have you learned any lessons as a community leader along the way? And is there anything that, looking back, you wish could have been changed or done differently during this process that we might be able to learn from if Brookline has another opportunity like this in the future?
Well, one of the things that I think it's really important to stress, and first of all, I want to say thank you for the question, because it's an important one, and Brookline needs to continue to be a continuously learning and improving community, both in terms of its town government and its processes and the way that we all sort of interact together. So one of the things that I think we could have stressed more is how this project fits into Brookline in terms of not just space, but also in terms of time. This project is a project that's going to unfold over 10, 15, 20 years across the entire commercial area. And there are some things that are already developed, like the building on the corner of Hammond and Route 9. There's this project that is going to take several years to be fully realized. And one of the advantages of having a vision for the entire area is it also gives other significant developers an opportunity to figure out how they can integrate with that vision. And so I think a lot of the discussion about, how quickly something is going to change or how big the disruption is going to be, we could have done a better job of weighing that against sort of the time horizon of the projects, and also the time horizons of other sort of forces that we keep in mind. Demographic change, climate change, technological change, and all of those things are all sort of unfolding in parallel to this project. And I think we probably could have done a better job of providing that kind of context within the work.
Michael, has there been any consideration of how pedestrians would cross Boylston Street in this area?
That's a good one.
Yes, that has been an issue that has come up in multiple contexts. The place we are in that is, once we put the zoning in place, we've already begun conversations both with Newton, the people on the other side of that street, and Mass DOT about safety improvements, and whether that is improving crosswalks, infrastructure, more pedestrian infrastructure of different kinds. That is going to unfold in that sort of three-way conversation.
Michael, can you share, you may have said this before and I missed it, how many residential units will there be in the project overall, and what's the mix in terms of affordable housing?
Right. So there are, within the condos, there are 126 condo units ranging from 1 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. Those condo units, because they are amenitized with hotel amenities, and the condo fee structure doesn't really work for affordable housing, the town has negotiated the Affordable Housing Trust Fund payment for those condos. And we will take that money and leverage it, 7-to-1 or 10-to-1 across the town. So, for example, the project Walnut High, I don't know if the timing of those payments and this kind of, but it's something on that scale. It's the kind of thing that this can leverage to, somewhere around 100 affordable units. The building C, on the western side, the 7-story apartment building, will have on-site affordable housing. So it's 140 units. 21 of them will be deeded affordable housing at 50% AMI or less.
Thank you.
And what's the impact on the local schools expected to be?
The modeling that we've done, if you look at the sort of entire residential population, it's somewhere between 0.15 and 0.2 students per unit. So it turns somewhere between 30 and 40 units spread across 12 grades, 13 grades, including kindergarten.
Has there been any thought about if the developer decided they wanted to change the scope of the details of the project? Like in Newton, there've been several big projects that have basically the developers just stopped and they said, look, we can't do this because office space is not working. We need to do all residential.
Yeah.
I know it hasn't been a real big issue in Boston, but I do read that hotel usage is changing with Airbnbs and much less business travel. So has there been any thought about what if they come back and say we don't want to do a hotel, we want all condominiums at that location?
I actually, the sense that I have is that building A, the hotels and condos, is actually the strongest financial portion of the project for the developer. And it is the medical office space that is less remunerative for them. And that's also the thing that they're building third in terms of the 3 buildings. So that's more where I would be concerned. I mean, we do have a memorandum of agreement that describes the program. So if they want to change it, then they do have to come back to the town to get the appropriate permits.
The town meeting would have to approve that also?
I'm sorry?
The town meeting would have to approve that?
No, it's in the memorandum of agreement. It's not within the zoning. So the question of would town meeting have to come back? That may be above my pay grade to answer.
That would be a change of use, I think.
Well, no, the only reason I say that is because the warrant article that specifies the authorization to the select board to enter into the memorandum of agreement, right, all of these steps that have to be followed, has a description of the program in the warrant article. And so I don't know if like changing that would require updating that warrant article, because that authorization ultimately comes from town meeting.
Last question or last pitch?
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you, well, actually, I have technically one question and 2. The one part is, have you guys thought about with this development and then back to the pedestrians question over Route 9 about another way to kind of generate income for the town by looping the police department and having like maybe a detail to ensure safety across Boylston Street or something like that. And then the other one is in terms of a whole, do you think that some of the laws that allow for more of this type of development or more housing development in the town, things will get a little less strict? But that's why people aren't building as much, is because they're
you mean
having problems.
less strict in terms of zoning?
Yeah, right.
So to your first question, that's a great question. No, that question hasn't been considered. I don't know how the economics of such a provision of service would work. But that, within transportation, that's something that they could look at. To the question of whether this project heralds a new era of more compatible zoning within Brookline. So this has been a 2-year project. It was originally scheduled to be a 1-year project, and we are continuing to engage with neighbors, and neighbors still are expressing concerns about the scale of the project. So I think that, well, my hope is that things like the comprehensive plan and sort of a more macro sense of what Brookline needs will help foster opportunities for individual cases. But I expect that the people who are engaged in this work at the town level and take it very seriously and do very rigorous work will continue to do so. And to the extent that that work also factors in the economic benefits of development, I think that that transformation is happening, and as well as the benefits of, for example, the need for more housing in order to just increase the supply relative to the demand. Those are two aspects of development that are sort of bearing down on the town, and I think that they are being recognized.
Michael, I want to thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your PR. I said at the opening, I think we're incredibly lucky to have people like yourself and Bernard who are willing to dedicate the time. You can just get a sense of how much time is required to proceed and make a development like this successful. So,
And vision.
I
thank
second
you
that,
much.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It
you.
really is both a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Excellent.